Hi everybody, welcome to Fresh Outlook, the show where we're talking about what you're talking about. I'm your host, Taryn Winterbrill, but just call me TWB. Well, today's show is all about the future. First up, the future of our country's children, namely child poverty in America. It's a topic that many feel should have been a part of the presidential debates. The numbers are staggering and they're on the rise. Then we'll discuss the future of our planet, specifically climate change and what it means for all Americans. Then we'll tackle the future of privacy. With Facebook, Google, and Twitter dominating the common lexicon, the question is privacy dead? Finally, we'll talk about the future of giving. Forget Black Friday or Cyber Monday. The spotlight is now on a new day of the week. It's called Giving Tuesday. We'll explain coming up. But before we get the conversation started, let's meet our all-star panel who I love seeing once a week. Once a week is not enough. I digress. Welcome, everybody. Let's start with WJ. Who are you? Where are you from? And I always want to know why you're here.
I know. TWB, I'm WJ O'Reilly. I contribute to CNN, and I'm a partner with Harvard College and its Center for Public Interest Careers.
Great. Sounds better every week. Who else do we have on the panel?
I'm James Peterson. I'm Director of Africana Studies at Lehigh University and a contributor to thegrio.com.
Welcome, as always. And Francesca FM on the dial, as we like to call her.
Your radio dial, that's right. I'm Francesca Maxime. I'm a news anchor here at Ebru TV and also the author of Rooted.
All right, welcome everybody. We'll get the conversation starting in just a moment. But first, listen to this statistic. 16 million children in this country are living in poverty, and unfortunately, the numbers have been on the rise since 2001. Child poverty in the U.S. has hit a record, and it continues to get worse. Take a look.
And we know in our hearts that for the United States of America, the best is yet to come.
Of the many topics discussed and analyzed during the recent presidential election, one that many feel was completely overlooked was the issue of child poverty. Mention the poor inside the U.S., and many envision low-wage workers or completely unemployed adults. But often, behind these individuals are families, and more specifically, children. Currently, 23%, or more than 1 in 5 children in America, are living in households below the poverty line. Among industrialized countries, that's the second highest rate in the world. Within the nation, you'd have to go back to 1962 to find a bigger number.
Sometimes they don't have that much work, we don't have a lot of money, and sometimes not enough money to pay the rent.
Is this yet another example of how the American dream is over? And what can and should be done to fight the causes and effects of child poverty?
By the way, that statistic obviously staggering. 1 in 5 children in America living below that poverty line, income below $22,000.
Yeah.
Family income.
Striking family income, striking numbers. Breaks my heart to hear it. I mean, first off, I'm glad we're talking about it because no one else seems to be talking about it in terms of the leaders of our
and it's significant actually to mention
country.
that this is the highest that the number has been since 1962, which is actually the height of the war on poverty in this country. Right. And to see that things have come full circle into
what does
this
that
century.
say about us? I mean,
what does it say?
We're not doing enough to make sure that it stays on the national platform in terms of political conversations. You know, what happens is, especially when you talk about child poverty, you know, children don't vote. And sadly, our elections have been so crystallized around money and about, you know, special issues that if you actually don't vote, it's very difficult for you to have a voice on the national platform. So we really need leadership around these issues in order for us to take it a little bit more seriously. But you're right, WJ, the numbers are terrible, and it's really at epidemic levels. And we really need to be talking a little bit more about what can we do about it.
Why is nobody talking about it? I mean, this is an
epidemic.
epidemic.
Frontline's talking about it.
Yes,
our esteemed colleagues at
thankfully.
PBS. That was a documentary that I watched a couple of weeks ago, and it premiered in November. I guess it's last month at this point. And they it's called Poor Kids. You know, I think we endorse good work as it's done by our colleagues as well as ourselves here at Ebru. But it basically talked about that, and it profiled a couple of families in Illinois.
Puts a real face on it.
It did.
It does.
You know, Caucasian children,
That's
as well
right.
as African American children, children who were the single parent children, as well as the family.
Caucasians, by the way. I think it's a good thing.
It is.
And
It's very important that you have,
it's
it's important that you have white folk on there because
Please.
people think about poverty as being something that's related or limited
a
only to
non-white
people of
issue
color.
or something, and
Exactly.
it's absolutely not.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
case.
You mentioned the front line,
Sure.
Francesca. Let's just play a quick bite from that program. Take a look.
I live in a shelter. I wish I never lived here.
My mom kind of made a wrong turn. I'm hungry.
I know, so am I.
I think when I get older, things are going to get harder than they are now.
You know, one of the things that's striking about the Poor Kids documentary is that it allows you to see the extent to which poverty impacts the lives of kids. Like, they're worried about bills being paid, not having a home, they're hungry, no place to eat, you know. Like, those are issues that children in this country, and really children all over the world, should not have to worry about.
I mean, an 11-year-old talking about bills.
Exactly.
I mean, it seems so
Here's what, having
place.
watched the documentary from start to finish, and having also grown up in a household where we took in people that were homeless when I was a child,
Wow,
quite
terrific.
frankly. Thank my mom, not me. But, you know, two things struck me. One is that the kids were talking about having their Air Jordans and getting their big flat screen TVs, and they were talking about you know, living in a place that had a yard and things like that. It was interesting to see what my conception of what I thought it would be to be poor was, because I'm going back to my old Italian immigrants, when all it was about work, having a roof over your head, and being together as a family. These kids have a different set of expectations now, and so that was also a little bit jarring. The other thing about the documentary that I thought was a little troubling was that they kind of interviewed one of the parents as if she was a single woman, because half of the kids that are in poverty in the United States are of single female parents.
And that's highly significant.
Right, because
Absolutely.
and it points to a whole host
How
of
can
other
you lead
issues.
how can one parent lead a family safely and securely? It's not possible. When actually the messages in our society are, you know, it's okay to break up, you know, no one really kind of keeping their nose to the grindstone in marriage, for example, and then creating these splintered families that can't support the children, can't support themselves.
I don't know. That's
Really?
a little bit more complicated. I mean,
It's a little bit more complicated, but this is an important feature of it, I believe.
It is, but I think that feature tends to, you know, make us or force us to kind of blame single mothers, and really, you know.
No, I'm not doing that.
I'm saying have a different conversation.
I'm
about
blaming
single-parent
society
households.
for making it so easy for people to break up, to actually say, hey, no, I think I'll try something. See, don't scowl. You always scowl at my remarks. Don't do it. Please, scowl at home.
Oh boy.
She's not scowling.
All right,
She's thinking
break it
about
up.
what you're saying.
Break it up.
Because listen, here's the thing.
Right.
If we live in a society that is wealthy enough, resource rich enough for us not to have homelessness and for us not to have child poverty at all, right?
All
And
evidence
we can
the
start.
contrary, but continue.
Right. So
I
we
think
can start to
everybody
talk
can
about
Strengthen the
agree
safety net.
But listen, we can talk about relationships, but to me, that's a different conversation.
Yeah,
I don't
I
think it is. I'm sorry.
I think everybody
it's
can
too
agree
easy
that-
for families to break up and then put all the burden on supporting the children on the mother.
I think everybody
Come
can
on.
agree. I think everybody can agree on the fact that in an ideal world, all children would be, you know, born of and raised by a loving group of people, more than one person, a supportive community, a system. It could be a nuclear family. It could be some variation thereof with grandparents or whatever.
Absolutely.
I don't think we're
My
going
two
to,
dads.
you know, quibble on that. The reality is that when you have half the people who are poor children in this country being raised by a single parent, it is problematic because there are fewer resources. What I found.
But why is that, Francesca? Why is that they're being raised by single parents?
That's another topic for another
Well,
Fresh
that's about
Outlook
the
show,
divorce
but I
rate.
think
I
that
mean,
right now,
well,
I think what we're
yeah.
trying to talk about is the actual issues of poverty. And in the United States, for example, we're second to Romania.
Yeah, second to
Yeah.
Romania.
Realize
I
that.
want
But
let's
what
talk
are we
for a
trying
moment
to say?
though.
That it's
In terms of
bad?
poverty rate, yeah.
That it's a problem that we need to solve, or that it's a
course.
problem that it is that's not possible to solve? What are we saying?
Well, that's
about
what we're
this,
trying to
really?
figure out. Is this
Well, of
solvable?
course we can solve
Absolutely,
it.
it's solvable.
Absolutely,
It's absolutely
it is
solvable, and it has
solvable.
to be addressed on at least two fronts. On the one end, if you watch the documentary, you'll see that, and this is what's important about understanding, like, people having flat screens and then still being poor. One, poverty is really being measured by food insecurity, and so we have to think about people being able to eat more than what they necessarily possess. But when you look at those families, a lot of them are in transition. They transition into poverty. Why?
Sure.
Because of the job market. What
Right.
kinds of jobs?
1
are
in
we-
13 are unemployed.
And
How
what
many
kinds of
children
jobs,
does
what
that
kinds of jobs are they
translate to?
losing? Were they losing construction jobs? They're losing the kinds of jobs that are directly impacted by the kind of economy that we have.
Correct.
The
Let's not forget
outsourcing,
manufacturing jobs
the
that
outsourcing
don't
of
exist anymore.
the outsourcing of manufacturing jobs, the outsourcing now of service industry jobs like call centers, and the combination of the implosion of the housing market, which eradicates a lot of plumbing jobs, construction jobs. So we need to address it from that perspective, which means we need government investment in infrastructure and the rebuilding of roads. We've got to hire more teachers, hire more police.
Like the 30s WPA movement,
WPA,
get people
yes,
working.
we-
People
we-
have
Right,
the
and there's a
skills
lot
to
of federal programs out there that might be cut in the fiscal cutoff that
Yep.
would very much subject kids to even worse situations than they have now.
In a
Which,
moment,
again, no one is talking
we
about.
have to talk about the effect on education, health, and spirits of these children. How
Yes.
sort of poverty is correlated to their health, and it's just sort of the slippery slope effect.
Well, their families had better have faith to be able to inject some hope in these children.
I hope so. But but speaking of just sort of food, we do have a piece we want to show you. It's about sort of growing your own food to combat the situation and the epidemic. Take a look.
The spring gardening season is in full bloom in New York, but one resident is farming tilapia instead of tomatoes. Christopher Toole raises his own fish in his apartment in plastic bins like this one.
We have a 1.5 pound tilapia in here that's ready to eat.
Toole turned to urban fish farming after he and his wife, Anya Pozdeyeva, left their finance jobs in the wake of the recession.
Our cash flow just disappeared. So we had to think about how we were going to provide protein for ourselves.
They started with nothing but willpower and a couple of recycling bins. But soon they grew from feeding themselves to selling baby fish to other farmers with staggering success.
The increase in the number of people interested in this is a little overwhelming. We keep selling out of fish. We really can't grow them quick enough. Should we try to pull him up? There he is.
Now, Toole and Pozdeyeva teach urban fish farming all over New York to adults and children. All you need to get started is a food-grade container, clean fresh water, and an air pump. Pellet food provides a balanced diet, and in 9 months, tilapia can grow to be a full pound. Pozdeyeva and Toole go even greener by using the dirtied fish water to fertilize plants. You can start your own farm with less than $200. But Pozdeyeva says they hope to spread more than just an inexpensive food source.
The biggest thing is the pleasure of teaching kids about the food, growing your own food, connecting to it.
So, Joseph.
Another advantage, Toole and Pozdeyeva rave about the taste. With so little distance from tank to table, a fish dish doesn't get much fresher than this.
Well, that's the question. Is tilapia the cure? I mean, what's that old adage? Teach a give a man to fish, feed him for a day, but teach him to fish, feed him for a lifetime.
That's ideal, but when you're in transitional housing like the Salvation Army or a hotel or some kind of a Motel 6, and you're literally putting,
it's not really tilapia friendly.
Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, they're trying to put milk in the sink because they don't even have a fridge.
But the idea here is there are sort of alternatives.
Necessity is the mother of invention. I think that's really kind of cool that they're finding ways of actually trying to improve the food situation. Yeah. But I think that actually snakeheads, those really crazy fish that are finding their ways into the waterways, they grow to about yay big.
Oh, okay.
And the answer is actually eat them.
Okay.
Actually,
will that cure a poverty epidemic?
That's a great segment, but what we need to be thinking about how to bring things to scale.
Yeah.
Right? And so there is a way to bring organic micro farming to scale to address issues of poverty. Again, it takes state and local and government support to help.
You're talking about major movements in the country.
So let's talk about some of that government support, because the Earned Income Tax Credit kept 6 million kids out of poverty in 2010. Food stamps, 2 million kids out of poverty. Right. And then you had school lunches that kept another 1 million kids out of poverty. Those are all the kinds of programs that could be cut, the quote-unquote entitlements that could be cut.
$6.4 billion, I believe, in programs for kids to feed them.
And again, not mentioned in any of the fiscal cliff
discussions. It's not being discussed.
Yeah,
it's invisible.
It's invisible.
So the idea being is that if you want to talk about those kind of programs, they need to be rolled into, as James was saying, into some kind of an overall sort of tiered approach, because if you look at the charts, all of the kids that are in the highest poverty states, 25% and above, are in pretty much the southern areas, a lot of the red states. Then you look at some of the blue states or areas like DC, right? But the second tier,
the most concentrated poverty, though, you're right.
It's in the south. The most concentrated, and they do have more, frankly, space to do some of the kinds of things, the agriculture stuff and maybe the fishing stuff that you wouldn't have to do maybe in the Bronx. Although you can talk about
a large-scale governmental commitment that needs to be made to these sorts of things.
It's a large-scale problem. This is exactly what you need government for.
So this could be our next WPA.
It could be. We could take a fraction of the billions of dollars that we sort of funnel to the subsidies of big agribusiness, big cow farms, big corn farms.
New movements
fraction of that, and put it into inner cities and put it into rural areas to help them cultivate smaller farms and be able to address issues.
And
of
movements
James,
like
you're
Too
right.
Small to
Politically,
Fail are
how are
trying
you
to
going to
do
make
that.
that
Call
happen?
Washington's. We got a month before we go off the
No,
cliff
he's
from this
right.
hunger
He's
cliff.
got
There
it.
are
All
adults
over.
trying to be a voice to the children now, the children that don't vote. Too Small to Fail is one of those groups that's coming up.
Right.
Hopefully they will get some traction and they'll be able to
There
speak for the
there's
kids.
terrific groups forming, which we didn't get a chance to get into, so we have to go to break. But to be continued. Does that sound good?
Yep.
All right. Straight ahead on Fresh Outlook, as our look into the future continues. Up next, the future of our planet, as in climate change. Stay with us. That's it.